So, welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So, this is episode 85, which is a really great group chat that we just had with Ashish Walia, who's co founder of Lawtrades. So, Lawtrades is an online marketplace for hiring legal professionals, which is used by companies like DoorDash, Yelp, and Pinterest, to name a few. It's a fast growing marketplace that also recently announced their Series A round. So, this is a really great group chat with Ashish, where we got to learn more about the founding story of Lawtrades, how it's evolved and scaled as a marketplace for hiring legal professionals, and also had a great group Q&A for those on the chat. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and know you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So Ashish, welcome to the group chat. It's definitely great to have you join us here today. So big congrats on the recent announcement for your Series A. And, I'm really excited to learn more about it. And Lawtrades is a marketplace here. Before we jump into things, though, I think it'd be great if you can start off by sharing a little bit more on your background for those that don't know you.
Yeah, so I'm Ashish. I'm one of the co-founders of Lawtrades. We're a legal tech startup. A bit about myself, I started working on Lawtrades with my co-founder in around like 2014, 2015. We were definitely just dabbling with it back then, and I was in law school at the time. So the whole idea behind Lawtrades right now is, we connect people to freelance legal professionals, so a lot of freelance attorneys, paralegals, etc. And yeah, started during law school, and I went to law school right after undergrad. During law school, I realized, like a lot of people do, that it's not there's a lot of like negative perks with being a lawyer. I kind of realized that through my internships during like my first year and second year of law school. I was always a little entrepreneurial as well. So we started dabbling with Lawtrades around my second year, and here we are like 5 years later.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing with us. So going back to the early days, what were like the first steps that you took to start it as a marketplace?
So the first step was just really figuring out how the hell we were going to survive and like make money. We were both in a position, me and my co-founder, where we both had like a lot of student loans. We didn't really have like a safety net. So step one for us was, it wasn't about building like the biggest marketplace ever. It was really just around like, how do we get some sales through the door? So in the earliest days, the way we tested that was we just kind of looked at what everyone else was doing that were marketplaces, and a lot of the models were very subscription based. So in the earliest days, I would like leave my law school class and like try to sign up lawyers mid class, and trying to get them to pay us like a subscription. We would go to office, cold email lawyers all throughout New York, and try to get some FaceTime with them. So in the earliest days, we were more of like a subscription marketplace, and we were connecting them to clients. And then slowly evolved over time. After law school, we had the harsh realization that bringing on, not to get too technical, but I know you guys are all marketplace aficionados. So, the challenge that we ran into when we first started was we would bring on divorce lawyers, personal injury lawyers, criminal defense lawyers. If you wanted to start a company, you could also find a lawyer through us. And, we figured out that the demand side was incredibly hard to bring together, right? Like you would need so many different types of leads to come to Lawtrades. They would need several options and several locations. There was a lot of barriers that we were going through when we first started. But yeah, over time, we just kept refining the approach to what it is now, where we focus on servicing businesses. So those are our demand side. The businesses that we work with are largely like late stage tech companies. That's sort of our sweet spot. So we work with brands like DoorDash, Pinterest, Gusto, Redfin, and we connect their legal teams internally to a lot of flexible staff that they could hire. What we found over time was, a lot of like white collar industries, whether it's finance, legal, HR, et cetera. A lot of the folks that own those functions within bigger companies are incredibly understaffed, very overworked. Their departments are viewed as like cost centers for them. So our inflection point at Lawtrades really came together when we realized like the general counsels of a lot of these companies need extra help, and if we could get them talent really fast, very seamlessly at reasonable prices, and everyone's vetted, then that could be a really good model. So that's along the way, that's kind of what we pivoted to, and that's what we've been doing for the last 3 to 4 years now.
Yeah, that's really great. So you mentioned that pivot was about 3 to 4 years ago.
Yep. Yeah. We pivoted around 3 to 4 years ago. We did it with, very little money in the bank. We were basically on life support for those initial early years. And around that time, some of you guys might be familiar with companies like UpCounsel or Atrium. While we're trying to figure out our own path, and barely raising a seed round, we did it by the skin of our teeth, basically. Companies like Atrium and UpCounsel, I think, had raised like around $100 million collectively between the two of them. So we were dealing with that mid pivot as well, and trying to figure out our own identity, our own purpose, principles, etc.
At that moment in time with some of the competitors, kind of like you mentioned, what was it like kind of thinking through your business and the potential direction of it, and maybe some of like the kind of I would say like nuances that went into thinking through what does the future look like for us as a marketplace?
Yeah. So we started working with these consumers, and then we realized that, hey, the real opportunity is probably working with businesses. So we started working with a lot of early stage startups. Like at a certain point, you would have been able to go to Lawtrades and set up your Delaware C corp or get a basic contract drafted, and that's sort of what UpCounsel, Atrium, and there was obviously some others too. We were all trying to be the on-demand legal service for businesses. What had happened is we realized that one, working with smaller businesses, it's great to serve them, but a lot of them didn't need our marketplace that frequently. If you think about your own selves, you might need to hire a lawyer as an early stage marketplace maybe once a year, twice a year, if that. If you do need more than that, it's probably not a good sign. But yeah, we would the writing was on the wall, right? Like working with smaller businesses was a bad business model. We knew that from doing it our own, sort of being like the third runner up in the space. And we knew that they were probably dealing with that scenario too. Companies wouldn't come back frequently enough. When you're operating off like a margin, it's very hard to kind of scale that with a service that you're only using, just a couple of times throughout the year. But we had a few bright spots, during that realization. One of them was that we had a few big companies that were using us amongst all these smaller businesses. And we saw that they were just using us almost every day. Every day, every month, they were expanding, they made up such a large portion of, the gross revenue that was facilitated. And, when we were on life support, the decision was made like, hey, before we throw in the towel, let's go all in on this customer segment and see if that gets us anywhere. So that's how the pivot really came to be.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing with us. So you did mention some of those kind of like the mid-market and the enterprise companies, that use you. So what is that like experience like, when they come to Lawtrades and then, finding that kind of, the legal talent that they need?
Yeah, so we have a sales team that, their sole job is to really evangelize the company and get us in front of legal departments from bigger, companies. And when they actually need us, what they do is they'll post a job. They could do it right on our website. We approve that job. And from there, different folks start applying for that role. They're able to see the payout. They're able to see the scope, the duration, all that good stuff. And we target those jobs to our supply side in a very curated, niche way that aligns with their career goals, their skill sets, etc. And we connect both sides together. Eventually, they'll go through some sort of interview process or vetting process with our talent, and then at that point, we work out an agreement with them to get them onboarded onto Lawtrades.
Got it. So you do have some kind of like management layers as a marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so crucial, especially in the early days, like to have that high touch. We kind of swear by it, especially when your customers are, the customers you're trying to get are, you want them to spend a lot, right? So you have to really like learn about their needs, get in the trenches with them, really grow with them, learn with them, etc. So yeah, we're very hands-on. Even now, there's a way for people to keep track of their time, manage their payouts, view different opportunities that we have on the site. So even now, it's still very hands-on with how we treat our customers and our supply side, and we try to automate whatever we could in the process. It's just very tedious and repetitive.
Yeah, certainly. So, I was actually going to ask, that was going to be one of my next questions, after that kind of like initial, I guess we could say like match, right? Like what is that process like, when they go through kind of working together, that engagement, and as a marketplace, maybe some of the, points along the way that you add value?
Yeah. So when both sides get matched, a client will receive like a short list of different folks that we think are a really good fit for the role. They'll have an easy way to schedule interviews with those options. And at that point, they let us know who they want to move forward with, and we're building out really good automations around that. After that, the client is more or less connected with whoever they're working with. And with our marketplace, for the most part, they're hiring these folks with the intention of using them every single week, if not every single month, if not for 6 months or a year. So that's how they use us. And, a lot of people in the early days would say, hey, like, what's just stopping them from going around you permanently and just taking them off the platform and working with them directly? And what we found is, we found a customer segment that needs us for more than just one hire over the long term, right? So a company might hire one person now and might be working with them directly, but the nature of the customers that we work with, they need multiple resources. So it's not uncommon for a company to have maybe like 10 to 15 people that they're utilizing through Lawtrades at any given time.
Got it. Yeah, that was actually, I was going to ask about that, disintermediation, right? That's definitely something we all face as marketplaces to some extent or the other. So
Yeah, and we kind of positioned ourselves as, hey, you're working with us to find vetted talent. We're going to do that for you really fast. We're going to charge you a reasonable margin compared to, sort of legacy staffing firms or even the bigger law firms. And we're also going to be here for when you need to hire a paralegal a week from now or another attorney 4 months from now or whatever it is. So we're really invested in that long-term relationship, which is what our sales team really, kind of instills in those customers.
got it. Yes. So I'm really curious to learn more about, as far as so on the company side, like their needs when it comes to some of the the services that they're looking for and some of the talent. Is it something that you're kind of thinking about, like potentially productizing, or is it more of like we're looking for fractional kind of talent and help?
Yeah. So right now it's definitely tailored around fractional talent. And yeah, I think, for the future roadmap for us is like when you have a lot of data, we have like a few years of data now that's pretty reliable and it's predictable. And we see these different patterns of how customers use us. And yeah, we're definitely going to use that to leverage like flat fee projects that they could buy, maybe even hire someone permanently. So you get all these different insights when you just keep talking to these customers about all these different directions that you could potentially go in. So yeah, those types of things are definitely on our roadmap.
Yeah, and with all these different kind of like the different directions and kind of feedback and all the different use cases, I'm sure you're seeing, what are some of the bigger, I guess, like challenges as a marketplace, and maybe staying focused?
Yeah, I mean, to be transparent, for us, the biggest challenge right now is just hiring. So, of course, hiring people internally, it's so hard right now. Everyone's getting job offers left and right. So that's been really challenging for us. I would say the other hardest part about our marketplace, and it's almost a good problem to have, depending on how you look at it, but we're having a harder time trying to find the supply side than we are finding the client side. And I know like a lot of other marketplaces dealt with that in the early days. I know Uber was notorious for having that issue. Airbnb was as well. So we find ourselves in a very similar position. So a lot of our energy, our resources, our time are really tailored towards finding the right lawyers to add to our bench and the right paralegals and whatnot.
Yeah, has that kind of changed over the course of the past few years, as far as being supply constrained? Were you initially from the beginning, or is that like a more recent thing?
Initially it was all about getting those first few clients, and that's what we were obsessed with, especially when we were on life support. We didn't have a choice. So yeah, we were really focused on getting those initial clients, really validating, this pivot that we were going through. Over time, especially after COVID, and I would say even in the last like 7 months, we've just noticed that every company is dealing with some crazy all-out talent war. So these lawyers that we used to rely on to join Lawtrades in a very like predictable fashion, those folks are also getting lured by other opportunities elsewhere. So yeah, over time, it's become more supply constrained for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how are you thinking about that? I mean, how are you thinking about, really trying to, attract more talent, when it comes to lawyers and kind of scaling that up?
So the biggest thing we're trying to do right now is expand our brand so that we're not just viewed as a destination for finding freelance work and making side income or building your own practice, but we're also viewing our mission in evolving to also be a place where people could get upskilled. So if you're someone that necessarily doesn't have the right skill set for projects on Lawtrades now, how do we teach you the right skill set so that you could utilize us? So upskilling, I think, is, you'll see it from a lot of other marketplaces. Like the Mom Project is a really good example. They're doing that. That's part of their brand, right? It's not just to get talent, but it's also how do you make them successful? How do you educate them? And how do you, also build up the top of your funnel by providing those types of services? I think other things that we're doing too is really expanding like the offerings behind Lawtrades. So instead of just being viewed as a place where you could actively look for contract opportunities, like we want to make it so that you could also passively look for those. If you're working at another company, we don't want to, just because you're working elsewhere, like we think you should still have a profile. It should be anonymized. It should be private. And you could use that as well to just gauge different things that are getting posted on the site. So really just opening up our funnel, our platform in a more transparent way so that more people get access to it. So that we're not only just fishing for a very niche subset of talent that are available right now. We're thinking about it in a very long-term play.
Yeah, that's great. I love the, the mention of upskilling. So we've seen a lot of, talent and labor marketplaces in the community that are doing that also. So
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. It's a great way to really build trust, add a lot more value aside from just the monetary aspect of it. And it feels good. It feels good to help people learn the skill sets that matter now, because when you're in law school, the last thing they really teach you is to go out on your own and set up your own shop or anything like that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so I have it's a very specific question. But something with like talent marketplaces is one of the challenges that we've seen in the community from some of the founders is some of the I would say like the passive talent that signs up, kind of as you mentioned, like how do you kind of activate them more and engage them more on your platform, and what are some ways that like maybe you've done that in the past and help generate more meaningful kind of revenue or income for them, so that way they're I would say like shifting most of their time, to using your marketplace.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did was before, when you would get matched for a role on Lawtrades, it was largely based because a client said they need a, say, trademark lawyer, and you have trademark tagged in your Lawtrades profile. So like it was very surface level matching, and then we would try to curate the best options for them. And then of course you always notice like there's people that have profiles that aren't very active. They're not applying to jobs and things like that. So what we started doing, which really helped, was we got a sense of what people's work preferences were, not only for the very near term, but for the future. So some people we would find are interested in working independently. Some only want to use us to be this temporary place while they find out what they want to do with their lives. Some folks were interested in just traveling the world, didn't really care about what type of legal work they were getting. They just wanted to get hired right away. So over time, we got a lot more granular about what people were actually looking for in their careers. And that helped us out significantly with matching them with the right opportunities. So people were seeing things that were even way more curated for them. And, it wasn't this long drawn out thing where we were, building out all these complex algorithms or anything like that. In the earliest days, when we started getting more sophisticated with our matching, we would just text our most loyal, providers, we would message them on Slack. We have a community with them. So we would just really, communicate with them manually, try to match them in the best way that we could. We would do a lot of surveys and things like that through Typeform for sure to help us fix that problem.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing about the stories about, you hear like the matching and it's, not the algorithms, but, the founders texting or just sending emails, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you read, I don't know if any of you guys read the new Andrew Chen book. I forget the name of it. But even when Uber was scaling like crazy, they talk a lot in that book about how their team was mostly like operations people that were just on the ground, that were texting drivers to go to specific pickup locations or take certain actions within the app. So I was really surprised by seeing that even some of the biggest marketplaces we look up to today kind of started off in a very similar way.
Yeah, certainly. So I've read a lot about your recent growth. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that, and also too, what the recent fundraising journey has been like.
Yeah. So in terms of growth, um, the biggest thing that helped was like we found really good product market fit. We found a subset of customers, I would say, that have very similar pain points, even if they're in different industries. We found that they needed us not for just one hire, but over time they would need us for several hires. So the strategy was really about manually onboarding customers, ensuring that they're having an incredible experience, and then be there for them for when they need to hire that second or third or fourth or fifth person. And when you find, who those people are, you see these very similar patterns. So those patterns played out for us over the last couple of years. I would say that COVID definitely benefited us, in terms of how our marketplace is viewed more than ever. More people are going out on their own and starting their own things. So that definitely, I think, accelerated the need for marketplaces like ours. I think the other thing was that companies, and you might notice this in other industries, but companies are just having the hardest time finding permanent talent. So if they needed to hire someone right now, they're going to be posting a job. They're going to be spending months and months and months to find their ideal person. And that ideal person is also getting vetted and solicited by other people. So what we found during the pandemic, especially, was everyone just had these massive lead times to find their ideal people, but they would use Lawtrades as like this stopgap to help backfill those types of positions. So that helped our growth a lot. On the talent side, same thing. I think that the desire for people to go independent has really skyrocketed. I don't foresee that changing. So yeah, that definitely helped with our growth significantly.
Yeah, and then so that was at the start of the pandemic, as you mentioned. So when was the recent fundraising round?
Yeah, so we started fundraising around November. So we realized we had a lot of momentum. We had raised our original seed round, I want to say in like 2017 or 2018. So it was a while from raising our seed round to raising a Series A. We were profitable. We used services like CapChase to sort of finance the growth. We found that to be a super value add. And then over time, we realized we were growing a lot, and there was this unique opportunity to really swing for the fences in the space where that's growing a lot. So we decided to start raising our Series A around November. So yeah, I could talk about that if that's helpful.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll jump into that and learn a little bit more about what that was like.
Yeah, so our round was definitely way more nuanced, non-traditional. We started off raising through Stonks. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Stonks, but it's like this live demo day marketplace. And we started there. We raised some money through there. We got connected to a lot of different investors. So that was step one. After that, we started raising through a roll-up vehicle on AngelList, which was, I would highly recommend that. That was probably the biggest game changer for us because it allowed us to raise from our customers. It allowed us to raise from our most passionate users. So that was really fun. And it also allowed us to raise from just other founders that really resonated with what we're doing. We've been, legal tech, which is the space we're in, had a pretty bad rap. I think like a lot of people were scarred by, maybe Atrium going under, because a lot of notable people invested in that round. And we weren't the most shiniest startup coming through a lot of people's rooms, right? Because we had this gap of like 3 years where we didn't really fundraise. So we really relied on like the community, our users, other founders at the earliest stages of that fundraise. Then over time, we ended up finding a few different leads that were interested. And then we found one that we were just like super aligned with. His name is Louis Barrow. He runs a small venture fund. He's also a founder too. And, he kind of led the round at the very end, and it all came together that way.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great to hear. And thanks for sharing with us. Yeah, I was actually going to ask, if, what that was kind of like, getting some of the, I would say like investors to kind of like come back around, to Lawtrades, like as you mentioned, 3 years later. So.
Yes, my co-founder did a really good job at telling the story, telling the narrative. We were in a much different position now than when we tried fundraising for our first seed round, which was brutal. Like that was really hard. But the Series A was a lot easier because we had metrics on our side. We had good product market fit. We knew that 3 months from now, if someone passed on us now, like it's their loss. We knew that this was going to keep growing regardless of if someone joined us or not. So it really allowed us to align our interests as a company, our values, with the right people that thought about it the same way. So we didn't raise from people that were, that wanted like 20% of the company or 30% of the company or anything like that. We really raised from people that were super aligned with our mission. And the nice part about doing a roll-up vehicle, as an example, is the check size is really small for people to join. So that allowed people to make really small bets. And over time, I want to say, somewhere between like 60 to 80 people individually invested through our roll-up vehicle. And we had a really great presentation for them that they could view in one click. My co-founder also had it linked to a video that really described what we were trying to do, along with some of our future plans and how we were going to use this. And everything was really presented on this one clean deck through a company called Journey. So check out Journey if you're not familiar with them. It's journey.io. And it's like DocSend on steroids. And we pretty much crafted this amazing presentation on Journey. And the final link was a link for someone to invest, as long as they were accredited. And Angel has handled all that for us. So that's how that journey went about. When it came to finding our lead investor, Louis, that took, maybe, I want to say a culmination of maybe like 4 to 6 different phone calls. He asked great questions. We could just tell he really resonated with what we were going through as a company. And he understood the dynamics around legal tech because he was in Silicon Valley. So over time, we came to terms with him, and he ended up joining and being, the biggest check in the round.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. We actually have a lot of founders in the community that also use roll-up vehicles. So
yeah, it's a great tool.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, we have actually a lot sharing the fundraising space, so that way they can pull together some of the soft commits from some of the group chat guests that are operators and angels themselves. So
yep, and we also did syndicates through AngelList too. So we were all over their platform at the earliest stages of the round.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's probably going to lead to some questions here when we get in a group Q&A, which we're going to jump into here in a second. But before we do, so you have some really incredible experience with Lawtrades and, quite the journey building and scaling it. So do you have any kind of tips for early stage marketplace founders that might be helpful?
Yeah, I would say focus. And this is what worked for me. Like, I'm not saying it's going to work for you guys because every marketplace has so many different nuances. But I would say what worked for us was for sure focusing a lot less on like automation, tech, and scaling, and all these things that you just hear on Twitter, TechCrunch, all this stuff, and really just focus on manually onboarding customers. Because if you could do that and you keep them happy, and if they're the right customer profile, everything kind of works itself out, and you over time come to the conclusion that there's certain product things that really need attention. And I found that it's just much better position to be in than, you know, spending, 6 months building something and then launching a product versus, signing up people and also building at the same time. So that worked out incredibly well for us. And I strongly advise that. I think you're a big proponent of that too, from some of the content stuff that I see. And, there's so many low code solutions that you could use. The initial versions of Lawtrades were, and I'm talking about 2 years ago, were a bunch of spreadsheets on Google, Zapier, a landing page on WordPress, and just, that was really it. And we would process payments manually for people. So that's how we kind of stuck everything together, and it allowed us to just be really heads down on finding product market fit, rather than, doing the opposite first.
Yeah, that's great. I can certainly relate to that. So I definitely share a lot about no and low code. So
yeah, I would say another thing that's really useful, because we just had so many battle scars from it, is if on the demand side, if you're very transaction focused, I would say to like hone in on the customers that need multiple transactions, or significant activity very frequently. I found that to be, that's when we had our big inflection point for us as a company, is when we saw the same company not only using us every month, but they would also expand their usage with us over time, versus the earlier days where it varied so much. We would have some companies that use us kind of frequently, and then some where they might use us once. They were super happy. They were, grateful for the service, but they didn't really need us after that. And that puts you in a rabbit hole where you just have to keep adding more customers, and that becomes a lot more expensive and, a nightmare to manage over time.
yeah, that I was actually going to jump back in during the group Q&A and ask about that. As far as moving more towards like mid-market and enterprise, if that was like a kind of primarily based off of trying to increase the frequency of usage and not having to acquire new customers with startups that might have like a lower frequency and unfortunately go out of business. So
Exactly. Yeah, we dealt with the same thing. And it's like, if we look at the companies that are the marketplaces that are significantly bigger than Lawtrades, I think of companies like Touring or the Mom Project, or Catalant is one that I also studied very early on. Upwork might be another one. And the commonality with those marketplaces are they're all huge, but they got there by just finding those same subset of customers that had significant engagement activity with them. You take something like Uber or DoorDash, it's like the same thing there, right? Like I literally use those services every single week. And, they know that behind the scenes, right? And they're able to really optimize how I use their platform. So I would say that that's really important at the earlier days, and it's worth spending the time to figure that out manually.
yeah. So if you were to go back now, would you focus I'm assuming you would still focus on the kind of like mid-market, like
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
beginning?
Like I would do that for us. And I would probably say, if you're going after white collar or professional services and you're in that space, I think that working with the larger mid-market companies is a no-brainer.
Awesome. All right. Well, I said we're going to get questions, so I'll stop asking questions myself, and we'll get to the group Q&A. Hey, Matthew, do you want to jump on?
Sure. Thanks so much for all that information and validation that onboarding individual customers is the way to go. So
Glad to help.
My name is Matt. I'm the founder of Gear Focus. So Gear Focus is, excuse me, the marketplace for creators, which now there's 50 million plus creators. So we're not in the services business, but we kind of are because of the shift in the industry. And so my question to you is, you mentioned curation, right? Curating this content for your users. What was your experience with, because curation, like platforms are coming out now to curate content. Amazon just did my idea, by the way.
Oh, wow.
literally, like, I went to Amazon 3 days ago and I was like, oh, look, there's my idea, like a video and products. And so it's being validated. And that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to build our team, but we are in that extend our runway. We're going into a seed round, a 3 million seed round right now. So like, I'm going to be pitching. And so I'm trying to juggle all of these things at the exact same time. Any advice that you have as far as like how you were able to do that and curate that content to your audience, especially the people that are your key customers, like the return purchasers, the return for us sellers, and how any other recommendations as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, in terms of content, what we did at the very early stage was, we had like, let's say a couple dozen customers. They all had, pretty much the same title, all worked in tech, and, they kind of fit a very similar profile. And what we started doing in terms of content was we started sending out a very targeted, curated weekly newsletter to them. And it was witty. It had a lot of personality. I think you could even just go to newsletter.lawtrades.com or find it on our homepage somewhere. But you'll see it's like a very different tone, and it has information that we think, our customers need to know every single month or every single week. So the newsletter was, sort of our first big swing at providing content for our users. And over time, that newsletter expanded into interviews, into invitations to webinars that we would host. And what we found was, a lot of companies will make the mistake of saying, hey, we're going to host a webinar and show you how to use our product, or we're going to talk to you about our upcoming features, or something that is just so on its face, very obvious that, you're there for one reason, and that's to get sold on something. And our approach on the content side was always it was completely different. It was always, how do we give them information that's relevant to their careers so that they do a much better job at their careers? How do we give them insights that they're not getting anywhere else? And even though that's not our job, because we're a marketplace, we thought, hey, this will add a lot of value to them so that when the time is right, they'll come back to us and use us and post a project on the site. So that's how we think about content now. And over time, that newsletter, like I said, evolved into so many different other things. But content is the crutch that we really rely on to differentiate ourselves. And at the earliest stages, now we have someone full time that helps us out with content. But in the earliest stages, I don't know if you guys follow The Hustle, the newsletter. So like literally, when we had the idea for a newsletter, I just saw their writers because they would share them at the bottom of every newsletter, and I just like DM'd them every time I saw like a different newsletter that I liked, and eventually one of them started writing that newsletter for us. So and it might sound like it was expensive, but it totally wasn't, and it ended up paying a lot of dividends over the long term.
No, that's great information. I think that when you're looking at where we are with so much data right now and so much information coming at us at rapid speed, that the curation for all of us, like from a marketplace standpoint, like content's always going to be king, right? Like give your users something useful. And that's what we have been doing. I mean, we grew our YouTube channel to over 14,000 subscribers. I think we're at now somewhere around there. But now we're in that raise. So I guess my next question is like, when you were in that in between, when you went to go raise, because I know it was 3 years you said in between your seed and your Series A?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
But like when you went into that raise, were you still like bootstrapping as far as employees and finances at that time? And how did you really manage that shift, that gap in between when the money came and the opportunity was there?
For our Series A?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, but yeah, prior to the Series A, we were at, I want to say like somewhere between like 7 or 8 full-time employees. So we were pretty small. And yeah, it was very much just, grinding it out and slowly adding talent whenever we could, whenever we felt like we had the budget or the growth to really justify it. So we were onboarding people on our team last year very slowly. I think we only hired 3 full-time people last year. And the way we were managing it was, everything, like one of our principles is like at our company is like think like an owner. So what we mean by that is like those initial sales that we had within our marketplace, like that came from myself. I would do all the sales in the early days. I would get all the talent onboarded in the early days, to the point where it became unsustainable. And then we had to bring someone on to help mitigate all of that. Right. And that's what we did. Like even on the product side, what we have now was largely architected by one person that's been on the team for a really long time. And then slowly we had to add someone on. So yeah, it was very, very scrappy, very manual. We leveraged a lot of contractors, and we only hired whenever we felt like economically like we could afford it and we weren't going to be broke the next month. So that took a while. We found that leveraging, like if you're a service-based marketplace, if you have recurring revenue, you'll find that you could take a lot of non-dilutive money, which we relied on a lot in the earlier days. We knew we were going to have a hard time raising a Series A, say at the beginning of last year, like, so what was that, 2021? We knew that we had to grow a little bit more and keep putting our foot on the gas in order to raise a Series A. We weren't quite there yet, but in that gap where we couldn't raise, we relied a lot on non-dilutive capital, which, there's so many providers out there to help with that.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Really.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. Those are great questions. Hey, Michelle, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm just starting a marketplace for supply chain and manufacturing talent. So similar white collar experts. And I'm really interested in your mentioning this, that you have a sales team. And can you talk about how did you develop your sales team? How did you decide to go with a sales team? Because a lot of, you said it earlier, right? Especially from investors, a lot of the messages I'm getting is that the concept is too service-based, not techie enough. And so I'm really encouraged to hear somebody support the more hands-on approach. So can you talk a little bit about, how did you start your sales team? How did that even come about? And are they doing outbound calls? Are they regionally focused? Like, how did you, what's the strategy around your sales team and how it was developed?
Yep, sure. So I'll tell you what worked for us up until now. And, obviously things change as we raise money, but the first, I want to say about $2 million in sales, I did myself. And, that was the span of, 16 months or something like that. Like it took a while. And the reasoning there was, one, we really couldn't afford a brand new, sales team because we were going through this pivot. So my whole thinking was, before I hire another salesperson, like I want to make sure that we have product market fit. We know exactly who to be selling to. We know what questions they're going to ask, and we have a good business model around it. So I viewed it as like, hey, I'm going to go out and just figure this crap out. And then, once I feel really confident about where we're going, we're going to hire a salesperson internally. Now, the way we, in terms of your second question of like how we built out the team and what we really assigned them with was, over time we found, this subset of customers that I would talk to and they would convert. After a while, what we would start doing was we would do a lot of content. We would do a lot of marketing. We would sponsor stuff where we knew that these customers were hanging out, they were consuming news there, they were spending a lot of their attention there. And what we would do is our strategy was very basic. Like the way we viewed it was, let's get as many email addresses as we could from our content, from our events, from, literally anything marketing related that we're doing. And let's get those email addresses and let's nurture the hell out of them. Let's give them really good content. Let's, find the signals within their companies that might make them a really good fit for more of a sales related email versus a marketing related email. So I'll give you an example. We would have, let's say 500 email addresses of our ideal customers, and we just need them to use us, but they're not ready yet. what we would do is we would spend a lot of our sales time nurturing them, providing them a lot of value. And if they were recently funded, for instance, that was a good trigger for us to say, hey, maybe we should give them a more curated follow-up. Like, raising money for us is a really good signal that it might be a good time for them to explore us. So we just did a lot of it manually. And, in terms of the pushback that you're getting, we've heard it too. We've heard it all the time. Like, oh, this is just a service-based business, or, a lot of non-marketplace investors don't get that you have to start off things manually. You have to kind of figure out what customers are doing on the platform, how they're interacting, how they're getting matched. And then, slowly over time, you develop like this roadmap of different product features that are really going to be needed for you to scale. Like, for us to do what we did manually with 500 customers, it's going to be impossible. Like, there's just no way we would be able to sustain it. But we told the story of, really saying, hey, here's what we did. Here's what we learned. Here's proof that it actually works. And here's proof that this thing, with the right funding, with the right product, with a team that we could hire a lot faster, could really accelerate. And we kind of know that this is going to happen. And if, it's sort of, if you're out, it's all good, but like the ship's leaving, right? And when we were raising our seed round, we had a hard time figuring out our story and like how this was going to work. And I think that that's a really like important part. And, I wouldn't say to, if you hop on a phone call with 15 investors today and they say, hey, it's too manual, it's too service-based, they might just not be the right investors. They might just not be the right marketplace investors. And we always found that, we found that from traditional VCs and even a lot of the earlier seed stage investors, but we talked to enough of them where at a certain point, someone would roll the dice and invest. What I also found was that founders are more empathetic and they resonate with a narrative like that a lot more, because a lot of founders had to do stuff manually and they didn't nail the product the right way. And I'm sure a lot of founders also think that, they probably should have started things off manually at first. So when we raised our Series A, it was a much easier sell to get a lot of high quality founders in, like Sahil Lavingia invested in us, the CEO of GoDaddy invested in us. And they really resonated with it. They completely understood why we were a little bit more service-based now, but we were going into a direction where it was going to become a little bit more automated. So it's a long-winded answer, but I hope that helped.
That was a great question, Michelle. Ashish, that actually comes up quite a bit in the community. I'd say either a post or on the office hours at least once a week. So
and sales don't lie. Numbers don't lie. If you could show really good revenue growth, really good GMV growth, whatever your metric is that you're leading with, that number doesn't lie. So after a certain point, if you just keep growing every single month and your sales are killing it, your customers are expanding, the story kind of plays out into the right narrative, right? And I would say like just try finding that right narrative for where you're at now.
Awesome, thanks. Hey, Zach, did you want to jump on?
Yeah, what's up, Ashish?
What's up,
awesome to hear from you. I was just chatting with Rad. I feel like it's like you were like the baby Lawtrades.
Oh, no worries.
Stonks, did an angel list RUV, talking to Draper. Yeah. And so it's like we've been like following in your footsteps years later. So yeah, I guess my question is, so like we're here on this community, obviously like the biggest kind of I feel like it's the biggest marketing buzzword in the world at the moment, but there's so much authentic, real action being made in community. I know Jacob on Shiny is kind of leaning into on the service side, the service provider side. How can you develop our community? Are you guys focused on that at all in Lawtrades, on how can you kind of build out support and resourcing community for the lawyers on the platform as well?
Yeah, it's a big initiative for us. And like, that's what we're spending a lot of time doing right now. So I mentioned before, like upskilling is a big area for us that we're really focused on. Providing career support, career guidance is a big area for us. Also giving them really good events and content that is just part of like being, it's a value add for being in this community. So yeah, it plays such a big role, and I think it's a great way to really develop the brand and the community and all that. We haven't done something where all of our talent live in this like one space where they get to communicate with each other, and they get to, you know, network and all that. We haven't done that type of stuff yet, but that's definitely on our roadmap. Like we're trying to implement something like that through Circle or Slack, or something along those lines. Because I think, you know, for us, like it's lonely working remotely, you know, and if you're doing that on a freelance basis, like that could get really challenging. And our supply side, they're going through a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same challenges, a lot of the same experiences. So we want to bring them into a place where they can connect with each other and gain value from each other.
Yeah, 100%. Also helps with like lags in demand for certain supply members and everything like that to still be involved and like stay plugged in.
Yeah, for sure. And you could give them a lot of incentives. Like one of our big incentives that we're going to be doing this year is rolling out a referral program. Like we've gotten so many referrals from existing talent that work with us that are successful, and they refer us to other friends of theirs that are interested in joining us. And, you know, when you have a really exciting community, people are going to do those things organically, hopefully.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a great question. I'm definitely a big fan of the community. So cool. Hey, Ashish, I actually had a question for you myself. You know, on the marketing or kind of growth front, maybe what are some experiments that you've run in the past that didn't work?
The stuff that was definitely, you know, I would say the biggest thing that jumps out for me is like Google advertising. Like we tried that. We found that it could work, but for our space, it was incredibly expensive. A lot of people were window shopping. So even if we would get conversions from our ads, like, you know, there wasn't really a chance for us to really sell them into using us. We also got a lot of like unqualified leads. So I would say Google AdWords was a thing that didn't really work for us well. I found that Facebook ads never worked well for us. Yeah, I think like the traditional stuff of sponsoring, you know, and it's bad to probably call them like legacy institutions or the legacy advertising platforms, but I found that didn't really work for us. Like we also tried to sponsor the old school, you know, legal blogs that a lot of lawyers would read, and we found that we were much better suited to sponsor the new and upcoming ones because people were a lot more engaged there. They had a more niche audience. There was a lot more incentive alignment with the community leaders of those new platforms and our incentives versus us and, you know, say like the oldest legal tech newsletter or the oldest legal blog. So, you know, I would say like that, those were probably the biggest waste of time. We also don't do cold calls. You know, so like that might be, it's not necessarily a paid experiment, but, you know, we never really did anything like that. We just started doing cold emails. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question a bit more. Our strategy was more around the lines of like, here's our ideal customer. Here's what they do. Here's their titles, etc. Here's where they live. And how do we target a lot of them at once by finding out where they spend a lot of their time, where they're getting their news, where they getting their professional networking, their continuing education requirements and things like that as a lawyer. And we would try to work with those communities.
Yeah, no, that's great. And definitely it makes sense to, you know, focus on the customers that matter and where they spend time versus everyone else and, you know, all the other platforms.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Val, I see you have your the hand raised up there. Did you want to jump on?
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Last question. So.
Oh yeah, I've got so many because like our company stories seem so similar. We're going to be raising our Series A this year, and we've had this prolonged period of stagnation between our seed back in 2018 and today, and 2021 actually, where we've just exploded. We're connecting engineering teams to small and medium businesses, primarily small. So yeah, I see a lot of similarities. What should I ask? Why not lawyers from agencies? Why freelance lawyers? Have you?
You mean like why not bring on like law firms, basically like bigger law firms? Yeah. So that's a good question. We haven't ruled that out. In fact, there are some super small boutique law firms. Let's say like anywhere from like 3 to 5 lawyers. Mm-hmm. You know, they're really small, but we do have some of those on our platform that are working. in terms of larger agencies, like let's contrast and say it's a big law firm. The issue why we don't work with the larger law firms is like their economic model is very disaligned with ours, because for them, you know, you get connected to a big law firm. Like if you guys raise a seed round or a Series A, you're going to probably be working with a partner from a big law firm. That partner is going to be farming out the work to a lower level associate. They have to charge a lot of money per hour in order to really justify like a lot of their overhead costs. And we found like our customers are coming to us because they're trying to avoid that, you know, and they're trying to work with people directly. I don't think that we're always going to be working with just solos and independent lawyers. I do think like there's a lot of up and coming, forward thinking, distributed law firms. And those are the types of people that we're definitely going to work with.
Oh yeah, thank you. Do I have time for another, or?
Yeah, go for it.
Too much? Okay, thank you. Product market fit. How did you understand that you've got that? Was that NPS, NRR? What did you pay attention to?
It honestly was, it could be so many things, right? But I think the true North Star for us was just seeing our gross revenue go up every month, and it was going up consistently. Now, that's not like, I don't mean that every single week we were growing or every single month necessarily we were growing, but year over year we were growing a lot, and quarter over quarter we were growing pretty consistently. Like Q4 for us is generally a little slower of a quarter. We don't grow as much during the quarter. But like we knew that the numbers were all trending up the right way. So that's a big thing. And then the biggest takeaway though for us was when we saw that a company that would hire a lawyer would hire a second lawyer, a third lawyer, a fourth lawyer, fifth lawyer, or a bunch of paralegals. Like that for us was, we were just like, wow, there's a lot of loyalty with the customers that we're using, and they're really sticking with us. And over a graph, you know, you could just see a lot of them would, you know, grow their spend with us over time. So those are really the biggest light bulbs for us.
Cool, fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Do I have time for another one?
Go for it.
Yeah,
So you'll be the last question, and we won't do like a wrap up or anything. You'll be the last question.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
If no one else has one, because maybe I should give it to Lanny, and maybe Ashish, maybe
go for it.
My LinkedIn, and if you're up for a chat.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and for anyone like that wants to connect after, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Awesome. All right. Well, in that case, Ashish, definitely appreciate taking the time to join us here today. Obviously, we all really enjoyed it, and this is definitely a really great chat. I do have one last question, so we'll just squeeze this in here, right? So, if you were to go back, to the early days of starting Lawtrades, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself about marketplaces?
That they are really freaking hard, that it takes a lot of time. Like, don't be discouraged by that. I used to get caught up in what every other company was doing. Like, oh, they raised a seed round and they don't even have a product. Like, I have revenue. Like, why am I not really figuring this out? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, there was always this constant question of doubt that we faced very, very early on. Why does this company seem like they're growing from, 0 to 1 so much faster, and like we're sitting here just trying to figure it out and just trying to survive basically? And I think like when you kind of ignore the noise and the tech media and like what you see on Twitter a lot, you realize like everyone's kind of figuring out yourself, just like yourself. And I would say to like just play the long game, like keep iterating. If you notice that something isn't working, like we took a while to pivot. So I would say that was a big learning lesson. Like if I do another startup ever again, it's like, just be honest with yourself. If it's really not working and you're not seeing your revenue grow up over a period of time, or, maybe the product market fit isn't there, like don't get discouraged. Just use that as a learning lesson to just try out something new very, very quickly. That's an advantage that everyone has as like an early stage marketplace. And it's okay to be scrappy. It's okay to do things manually for the sake of just getting whatever you're working on off the ground. So in summary, just block out the noise, play the long game, experiment like crazy, and be super honest with yourself. if you get the inkling that things aren't working and that you need to adjust. Everyone has to do it.
Yeah, that's really great, and I saw a lot of head nods, so we can all definitely relate with that. So
Awesome.
well, cool. Well, last but not least, time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
So I'm really active on Twitter, more so than LinkedIn. I'm at AshishW203 on Twitter. And then on LinkedIn, if you just type in my name, Ashish Walia, you'll see me there. So yeah, anytime there, happy to connect with all you guys after. I'm sure I'll see you in the community as well. And I really appreciate you guys listening to our journey. So yeah, looking forward to connecting with all you guys, and thanks a lot for the platform and the opportunity.
Yeah, this is really great. So we appreciate taking the time to join us. So
Cool.
yeah, and
Sounds good.
yeah, thanks again, and thanks everyone for the great questions.